Are you a football fan? Have you ever found yourself wondering, what in the world was that ref thinking? Well, Mike D, the referee, is here to help you. Join me on Whistle Talk as I talk to professionals on the field and in the booth to help you understand what is going on inside the mind of a football official. On the heels of finishing the NFHS Rule Series, I thought it would be good for a reboot of sorts. In this episode, recorded last year, I have the honor to speak with Jim Corpora to discuss how we enforce the rules we discussed in the previous 10 chapters. So sit tight and enjoy, and make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons. But before we begin, let's hear about the great things going on with Vets 2 Refs. Are you a veteran or a first responder looking for a new way to serve? Vets to Ref, along with their partners, supports you every step of the way, covering costs, supplying gear, and connecting you with top-notch training. Step onto the field and make a difference for the next generation. Vets to Refs, opportunity, community, and service in every call. Learn more at vetstorefs.com. That's VETS, the number 2, REFS.com. Vets to Refs, here to help you serve. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the next episode of Whistle Talk. Today, I've got the honor of having with me a longtime official, Mr. Jim Corpora. Jim is coming to us from the Pennsylvania area, but Jim does do a lot of helping out and work here in the state of New Jersey. So, Jim, thank you very much for taking your time today, this afternoon. How are you doing today?
I'm well, Mike. Thank you for having me on. It's a privilege, and I appreciate the invite very much. Thank you.
No, it's a privilege for me. Thank you very much. So, Jim, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
So I grew up in Easton, Pennsylvania, which is right on the New Jersey border, separated by the Delaware River. And my mother was from Phillipsburg. My father was from Easton. So those who might be somewhat familiar with the tremendous Easton versus Phillipsburg Thanksgiving Day football rivalry, I believe the first game was in 1895. And other than COVID in 2020, I believe they played the game every year, including World War I, World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam, and so on and so forth. So I grew up every Thanksgiving Day. It was just kind of a really big deal. Both communities were really football hotbeds when I was a little boy growing up. And oftentimes my father would take me to an Easton game on a Friday night and a Phillipsburg game on a Saturday afternoon or a Saturday night if they were at home. And it was always Thanksgiving itself was a big deal based on who won. It was kind of a family thing. And so, again, I grew up around, I should say, really quality high school football. And, I've been a jock all my life. I say that kind of with pride and not in any way to be ashamed of that. I've coached high school basketball. I've officiated high school college football and high school and college softball for a long time. And it's both sports have been great to me. I've been so fortunate. I was an Atlantic Coast Conference football official for 21 years. And during that time, I had the opportunity to officiate 278 ACC assignments in 21 years and 13 postseason games. So I've had a very fortunate and blessed career. And at this point in my life, I'm trying to mentor and give back to some folks. I have returned to the field after retiring from the ACC at the end of the 2021 season. And I knew some folks in New Jersey, and they kind of got me started up with the NJFOA. And it's been very warmly received and warmly welcomed. And it's become a pleasure of mine and a privilege to be involved with the NJFOA. So I guess that's probably enough of a background, Mike. But thank you for asking.
No, absolutely. And my actually, this is the first time speaking with Jim personally one-on-one, but I've had the pleasure myself of being involved in some of the clinics that Jim has put on for our state association. Jim has been a Zoom speaker we do off-season Zoom meetings about different topics. And Jim has come on and helped out. So Jim's been a great influence for us here in New Jersey, a great resource that we've been able to kind of pick his brain about and with the years of knowledge that he has, it's definitely been an outstanding thing for me personally, I know, and for people that I speak with in my Shore chapter, our association down here in Central Jersey. It's definitely been something that we do appreciate, Jim. So thank you again for helping us out.
Well, it's very kind words. I'm appreciative. Thanks, Mike.
Absolutely. So, reason I asked Jim to join us today, a topic of conversation that's been coming up that I've been seeing on my social media accounts, where I popped a question out about what other topics some people would like to hear about, and a big one has been coming back about penalty enforcement. So I asked Jim to come on, and today we're going to kind of dive into penalty enforcement, basically Rule 10 in our rule book and our rules manual, and in the past prior season, the 2023 season, Rule 10-4 kind of changed a little bit for us, especially me as an umpire, of walking off the different violations. So, Jim, what are your thoughts with penalty enforcement? Just an overview on penalty enforcement as somebody with the experience that you have.
Well, I think it's a very relevant topic, Mike. And obviously, a lot of folks must have reached out to you relative to that. Like everything else in officiating, I think I refer to it as complicated simplicity. And I think sometimes we have a tendency to overcomplicate things, and other times we probably don't realize maybe some nuances in Rule 10. You alluded to Rule 10, penalty enforcement. I'll say this as a kind of a general statement. A crew that efficiently, and I think that's the word that try to use at clinics and stuff, we want to be efficient with our penalty administration. I think sometimes we take way too long for simple fouls to go through for example, a simple false start. And I don't think sometimes officials realize the poor optic that creates for coaches, spectators, etc. I think that penalty enforcement generally is probably something that folks need to pay more attention to because it has a great impact on how the game is managed. Anyone can probably call a false start, for example, the right guard moves earlier, something along those lines. But we talked about this at a recent high school study group that we have, about 16, 18 guys get together 6 times during the summer in preparation for the season. And 2 of those times we actually go on a football field. And just walking through, like the idea of the referee finding an open area to give a signal and with an announcement, it really has dawned on me that folks, I think, take it for granted sometimes. And we need everybody kind of working in coordination, and that probably suffers a little bit too. So I guess what I'm saying in a very long-winded way, Mike, is penalty enforcement is an integral part of a game, and how we handle that as a crew, and certainly in particular the referee with a white hat, I think it goes a long way to almost giving folks, coaches, and spectators confidence in the crew, or conversely, maybe a lack thereof.
Absolutely. And one of my previous guests that I just had on is a white hat official in Central Jersey, and we were actually just talking about just the mechanics behind being the white hat, the crew chief, and the optics. And most recently, with one of our Zoom sessions that we had, Jim actually was going over the different techniques, different optics, and just using the microphone and different things like that, of how it does play an integral part in the game, and selling, in essence, the calls, making it, doing things with confidence, and really just how we're trying to basically show our professionalism on the field, along with having the game run correctly for all the people involved, the coaches, the spectators, the players. Because one of the big things that I've found with penalty enforcement is the lack of knowledge by, say, the PA announcer, or the lack of knowledge by the crowd, not understanding. And if we're doing it confidently as a good crew, and doing it efficiently, as you mentioned, I think it helps smooth over those people that are thinking our game at the high school level is not the NFL level. So I think that's where we tend to get into a little bit of trouble. Is that's where the fans start to heckle us. Jim, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think you hit it right on the head, Mike. Again, how we are perceived in officiating goes a long way to just, hey, you had a good game or you didn't have a good game. We could probably cite numerous examples where a crew maybe got a given foul scenario correct, but it might have taken long, or there is no announcement, or the referee's announcement isn't very good, and it just gives a very bad vibe. It really detracts from what the crew is doing. So I don't think it can be overemphasized, but at the same time, it's not rocket science, and we have to find a way to kind of have a balance to that. But referees, I don't, if anyone's out there as a referee, and whether or not you use an actual microphone, we know in high school, some schools have a microphone. The majority of them, at least my understanding in New Jersey, is that they do not. But all that being said, a referee's announcement is absolutely critical, and it goes a very, very long way to the entire crew, the effectiveness of the crew. And Mike, you mentioned that at a recent NJFOA off-season Zoom training, we did a thing called use of the microphone. And I think, and I'd like to think at any rate, that we're getting better as an association, but there's always room for improvement. But the first and foremost thing is that referees understand how important it is. It really does matter. I won't bore anybody, I hope, with this, but a number of years ago, I was in a game, an ACC game at a school called Virginia Tech, and their opponent was Georgia Tech. And to make a long story short, the referee himself called a roughing the passer against Virginia Tech. And all that's all good and everything else is flags down, and the umpire marks off the 15 yards. But the referee's announcement was, and I think I'm quoting this verbatim, was personal foul roughing the passer against Virginia. And I mean, the people of Virginia Tech, they went out of their minds. I mean, it was in the second quarter, as I recall. And the rest of the game, no matter what the referee did, announced, said, the 70,000 people were just out of their minds over this. And it sounds a little bit funny, a little bit humorous, but trust me, it's not. And our supervisor at the time, I can't tell you how upset he was. And then we find out on Monday, you fly home and all that stuff, and we get an email from the athletic director of Virginia Tech saying that, if you guys don't know where you're at, like this is not a very professional, a word Mike you used earlier, this is not a professional look. Basically, what are you doing? Yeah. And so it does have a much bigger effect than folks might realize, both ways, positively and negatively.
And to reinforce that point, you're talking about something that on the ACC network, possibly on ESPN or major TV channels, a game where, okay, that's going to get the optics. But now today, us as the high school officials, how many cell phones are out there? Who's putting this on Instagram? Who's making the different clips? We're on Huddle now too. So it's still now something that has trickled down, and our optics still do make a difference, because I've seen the Instagrams of how somebody on the sidelines in the crowd caught a particular play that maybe was a missed call or maybe was a perceived missed call, but they got it on video somehow, and now it's viral all over the place. So it is something that we're dealing with at the high school level now too, because it does get publicized and put out there, especially if the optics look bad with it.
Well, you're 1,000% right, Mike. And frankly, in a variety of situations, one of the things you probably heard me say on a Zoom meeting is, one of our jobs as officials is to eliminate avoidable mistakes. Mm-hmm. And when we don't do that, things tend to go south for us. And it's an easy fix. It's just kind of paying attention to detail and having your mind concentrating on the game and whatnot. But again, to your point, the overall point, the scrutiny that officials are under in the year 2024, and I'm sure going forward, is greater than it's ever been. And that certainly includes, Mike, as you stated, at the high school level. There's no question about it. The days of, I know when folks started years ago, we were always told, if they don't know who ref the game, you had a great game. That ship has sailed turned over and capsized. I mean, that's just the reality of it. People know, coaches know, athletic directors know, if a game's good, bad, or otherwise, at least in their mind, it might not be accurate, but there is a perception out there. And I'll never forget one time I was flying home on an airplane, and a guy came up to me as I was getting onto the plane from the gate, and he said, "Where do I know you from?" And I said, "I have no idea." He goes, "I know you from somewhere." So I don't know where that, kind of play is. "Oh, yeah, I see you on TV." And I'm like, this is unbelievable. I mean, you'd have never thought something like that.
Yep.
And to your point, in high school today, there's no question. Parents, grandparents, obviously coaches, huddle, whatever other platform is utilized, officials are under scrutiny like never before. And that's maybe just the reality of it, but we should accept that and not try to push against it. It is what it is, and it's not going to change. So I think part of it is just, so let's look good, let's sound good, let's be professional in what we do. That's probably part of what we signed up for in this day and age.
Absolutely. So now, with that, kind of let's dive a little bit more into the penalty enforcement aspect, if you don't mind, Jim. Rule 10-4. I'm sure you're kind of familiar with it if you don't know the exact terminology, and I don't know many people are, but Rule 10-4, and I pulled out the book here, goes over now basically how we're spotting the ball on different fouls. And the easy example I'm going to give to the listeners is at the high school level, if we had a holding penalty, on the offense, and our rule book is referring to A and B, K and R, but for our listeners, we'll talk offense, defense. So if we have an offensive holding penalty by a tackle, and that penalty was, say, 5 yards in the backfield, prior to this rule change, we would be marching that penalty off. If it was accepted, we'd be marching that penalty off from 5 yards deep in the backfield. So that would, in essence, be a 15-yard penalty. With this rule change now, we are going back to the basic spot, and in this scenario, it would have been the previous spot. So, Jim,
Right.
can you kind of elaborate on Rule 10-4 and how that has kind of changed over the years?
Yeah. Well, and I think what's happened in high school football. I mean, I know some folks throughout the country that represent their state at the annual meeting in Indianapolis. The high school federation office is in Indianapolis, as is the NCAA office, and really they're right across the street from each other. So, at any rate, to Mike's point, the rules for football have always been different. High school rules are different than college. College is different than the NFL. And there's vast differences that the average person would be, frankly, overwhelmed to even know the number of rule differences. But what Mike is alluding to, starting in the 2023 football season, the National Federation changed their penalty enforcements. And Mike mentioned Rule 10, Section 4. And he gave a great example. In the past, if a team committed a penalty behind the line of scrimmage, they would be penalized most of the time from the spot of the foul, which in essence would really make it hard for the offense to continue their drive. So in 2023, the National Federation Football Rules Committee changed the rule, which is now very, very close to the NCAA rule for penalties by the offense. And what the essence of it, the intent of it, is to give the offense more of an opportunity, I should say, to recover from, say, a 10-yard holding foul, where in 2022, if the team started at the 50-yard line and they had a holding penalty 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage, the next play would be, instead of 1st and 20, it would have been 1st and 30, which is almost impossible to overcome. So now, again, not to be redundant, but as Mike has pointed out, this year and last year would be now 1st and 20. That's still not good, but it's a much more makeable drive scenario to continue the drive. The other thing that I like what they did is that defensive fouls are a little bit more in line now with collegiate rules. I'm not, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not preferring college rules over high school rules. But in every rule change that exists, the idea is to create a balance between the offense and the defense. That's a difficult thing to do. Certainly the game today is more geared towards offense and scoring and putting points on the board and a number of other scenarios. But rule changes in general beyond player safety, it's geared to create a balance between offense and defense. So I think what we're seeing at the high school level is a little bit more of alignment rule wise with high school and college. And high school football in general, certainly people that watch high school football, and that's throughout this country, there's a lot of fans that live for Friday night or
Yep.
maybe Thursday nights now in a number of instances. But high school football it's the biggest sport in the federation as far as participants nationwide. And there's a lot of states and cities in this country where Friday night is still like the big deal. And everybody
Yep.
goes, and it's a community type thing. So it's important, I think, to a lot of people. And Mike, that's why I like these ideas of your podcast, because maybe even some fans catch up on these things and think, this is pretty interesting. But if you look at penalty enforcement, all right, you have terms like the previous spot, the succeeding spot, the spot of the foul, the basic
Yep.
spot. And these are terms that are kind of like a doctor might use with a patient. You don't know what it means. So you say, can you put this in English for me? Right. So if you ever hear a penalty, as Mike alluded to a minute ago, is from the previous spot, that means from where the ball was last snapped from. Right. And the succeeding spot is where the ball will next be snapped from. And then you have potentially a foul from the spot of the foul or the succeeding spot, the previous spot, the basic spot. So these are terms that officials have to master. And
Yep.
as a fan, you might not know what the previous spot is, but if someone says, well, it goes from the line of scrimmage 10 yards or 5, whatever the scenario is, that's a lot more understandable. So, but those terms are critical to an official's understanding. And frankly, I believe the more that officials are, I won't say a mastery of the rules because they're difficult, but a very good understanding of the rules, I believe an official's confidence has a direct correlation to his or her understanding of the rules.
Correct. So, all right, let me throw out a basic scenario for you now, Jim. Offense has a nice run. Let's say they gain 10 yards. So it was 1st and 10, they gained 10 yards. But now one of their wide receivers was caught holding, and that holding penalty now happened 5 yards beyond the original line of scrimmage. Where are we going to mark that penalty off from?
Okay, so let's say we start at the 50-yard line, so we have an actual yard line. The guy runs the
Yep.
ball to the 40, what we'd call the plus 40. That means on the plus side of the 50. So on the defensive team's 40. And we have a hold at the plus 45 by number 82, which is split end, whatever. So because the hold is behind where the guy got tackled at, okay, we would go from the 45 back 10 yards. So we would have a first down and 15.
Mm-hmm.
So that would become, by definition, what we call spot foul, because the spot of the foul is literally where the flag is on the field behind where the run ended, which was the plus 40. So we would go from the 45, count back 10 to the other 45, replay first down. So now we have first down and 15, and the game clock, unless the guy ran out of bounds, would start on what's called the referee's ready for play whistle.
Yep. And for our non-officials that are out there listening, Jim just kind of broke it down on how we were tested. The verbiage and the terminology that he used was basically what we would see on our tests of knowing where the spot is, knowing what's going on with the clock, all those different things. And that's kind of how it breaks down for us. And I've got books over here to my left and former tests and the previous tests that the cadets are taking where we use diagrams, and we would use the diagram to say, okay, this is where the end of the run was. This is where the flag was. This is where the ball was snapped from and broken down. Just like Jim said, okay, the yard line, the plus, the negative, whatever it may be. So appreciate you breaking it down that way. Now, Jim, here's one with using that same scenario. Ball's on the 50-yard line, but now I'm going to give it a little bit more specific. Ball's on the 50-yard line, but we're starting from the left hash. The hold, because it was a sweep to the right side, the hold by that wide receiver happened at the right hash. Still gained 10 yards. Still, the hold was still 5 yards down the field. Where are we spotting that ball now? It's still going to be 1st and 15, like you said, but the previous spot was at the left hash. Are we staying at the left hash, or are we moving that to the right hash where the foul was?
So, my great scenario on that, we're moving the ball to the right hash because it's a quote spot foul. So again,
Mm-hmm.
that means exactly on the field where the yellow flag is actually on the ground. So we would go, the next play would be 1st and 15, but from the offensive team's right hash mark versus the left hash mark. And that's where, if it was a previous spot foul, then we would go back to the left hash mark and mark it off. So, Mike, that's what I would call a graduate level scenario. And
Mm-hmm.
quite honestly, it kind of prompts me to think that you know what you're doing as an umpire, because you would run that scenario in your mind rather than just 10 yards from wherever.
Yep.
And that's good for you, Mike, and good for the listeners.
Yeah. So, and it is definitely something that I am definitely very lucky that I am on a very good crew that we will communicate with each other, because in the heat of the moment, there are times where I'm like, all right, where are we going from? And we'll communicate it. I got my wings helping me out, even if it's my deep wing. And we always talk together and say, hey, if we screw up a penalty, if we screw up an enforcement, we screwed up the enforcement as a group, as a
Right.
crew. So let's help each other out and communicate with each other. Um, so now again, let's backtrack to that exact same scenario. You had that left hash penalty. Toss sweep was to the right side, ended up at the right hash. That hold now happened behind the line of scrimmage. So say that wide receiver was a slot receiver and he was behind the line of scrimmage. So he was at the minus 48 when he engaged with the defender. So we have a hold now that's 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Where are we going to mark that flag from? Where are we going to mark off that penalty from?
So as we chatted about earlier, that becomes a previous spot enforcement. So we're going back to the left hash from the
Yep.
50 back to the minus 40, and we have a 1st and 20. So those two scenarios, Mike, that you've presented, again, it's kind of like graduate level work. And a person, even a coach, frankly, would say, well, why is one this? Why is one
Yeah.
that? Well, there's reasons, is my point. And the second scenario you presented, because the holding foul was behind the line of scrimmage, or in football vernacular, behind the previous spot, it becomes a previous spot foul. So we go back to the offensive left hash, mark off 10 yards for the offensive hold, and replay 1st down. So two great examples. It's the same foul. It's a holding foul, but where it happened on the field has a great deal to do with where the penalty is enforced from, or I should say where the foul is enforced from. So again, that's great scenarios. And those two scenarios could happen in the same game, in the same quarter, or whatever the
Yep.
case would be. They're not highly unusual or anything of that nature.
And for us at the high school level, and again, for the listeners out there that aren't too familiar with the field markings, the hash marks play a much bigger role in the high school game because it's closer to a particular boundary as opposed to the college level. It's a little bit tighter. And the NFL level, it's basically the middle of the field. The hash marks don't come into play as much as it could, where it high school, you're not getting the overwhelming amount of plays are typically going to be run to the field when the ball's on the hash mark, just because you've shortened the field so much. Where in the NFL, they're running right and left pretty much from anywhere. So it does make a big difference, and coaches need to know and want to know where the ball is going to be. So for the next play, if they're calling a flood route and the flood route is from the right hash and they're running flood right, well, they've now condensed their field and the coverage can be a lot easier for the defense. So they need to know and want to know where their ball is going to be marked for the next play. All right, so another one, Jim, here that people tend to kind of make a mistake with is the difference now between a live ball foul and a dead ball foul. What can you say about those two types of plays?
So as an official, and I would think as a spectator, as a fan also, and as a coach, whenever a foul is thrown, the first thing that the official reports to the referee is it a live ball penalty or a dead ball penalty? For example, pass interference has to be a live ball penalty. The guy throws the ball, and either the offense or defense interferes with their opponent while the ball's in the air. Conversely, a false start, meaning before the ball is snapped, the right guard beats the snap count. He fires out. So that's a dead ball penalty. So the very first thing in penalty administration is live or dead. Now, most of the time, this is easy to determine. just by the nature of the action. Again, you have a split end who beats the snap count because he wants to start his pattern, whatever. That's a dead ball penalty. The ball hasn't been snapped yet, and the offense player moved. Delay of game. The offense hasn't snapped the ball in the allocated amount of time, either 40 seconds or 25, depending. So that's a dead ball penalty. Whereas holding, pass interference, blindside blocks, chop blocks, those all have to be, by very definition, live ball fouls. And then you have things like personal fouls, such as a personal foul face mask or a personal foul late hit out of bounds. Some personal fouls are live ball, some are dead ball. So again, this is all back to, and Mike, you mentioned it at the beginning, Rule 10 and Rule 2, the definitions, which are absolutely critical to an official and really anyone having basic understanding of penalty enforcement, penalty administration. So, but again, every foul is either live or dead. And sometimes you'll get a play that has a live ball foul, and at the end of the play, there's a dead ball foul. And in high school, they do not offset, meaning each penalty gets enforced if the opponent who was offended chooses so. So I think what it all means, Mike, is it gets back to what I said. It's sort of complicated simplicity. It's not that difficult, but it's not. Everyone doesn't understand it, even though they may feel they do, quite frankly.
Yep. And a scenario that I've brought up to some coaches on some previous podcasts, and to kind of reiterate this one, 4th down, team goes for it, and they come up a yard short, but the play happens and the runner goes out of bounds, and now all of a sudden we've got a late hit out of bounds.
Right.
That's a dead ball foul, and that's a dead ball foul, and that's after the play has ended. If that runner did not get the first down, did not get the line to gain, the defense is going to get possession of that ball because the down marker is going to switch. It's going to be a change of possession. But then, because it's dead ball, we're going to mark off the 15 yards from that. And a lot of coaches in the heat of the moment see that flag come out for that dead ball foul, and they're like, oh, automatic first down. And like, no, coach, it's not. It's after the play was over. It's after the change of possession. They're getting the ball, but you're getting 15 yards out of it. And, well, the offensive coaches, they want the ball. So that's one that a lot of coaches get definitely a little bit upset with.
Great example. And then, again, that's not, I wouldn't say it's typical in every game, but it could certainly happen at any point in any game where there might be, and let's get back to where now the referee's microphone announcement, or just his announcement, is critical. Okay. After the play is over, we have a dead ball, personal foul, number 18, whatever's on defense. Okay. It'll be 15. However, it's first down for team B or the defense because team A did not make the first down initially. So again, there's a lot of principles that have to be understood and have to be clearly in an official's mind to have good and proper penalty enforcement.
Yep. All right, Jim. So I continue to kind of throw peppering you here with a couple of different scenarios. So 1st and 10, we'll go from the 50-yard line. We'll keep it consistent. Go 1st and 10, 50-yard line. We got a holding penalty on the offensive lineman, number 76. Runner gained 5 yards. On the tackle, the defense, number 56 on the defense, gets called for a 15-yard face mask penalty. So we've got a hold on A, and now we've got a 15-yard face mask penalty on B. So hold on the offense, 15-yard on the defense, for the layman's terms. 2 live ball fouls, Jim. What are we going to have on that scenario?
So what we would have is hopefully a referee's announcement, which says something like holding number 76 offense, personal foul face mask, number 15 on the defense. Those foul offset will replay first down. I mean, that would be the ideal scenario. Okay. And they're what are called offsetting fouls. Offsetting mean that since both teams committed live ball fouls before a punt or some other scenario that is a little bit down the road, and we would simply replay the down. So it's 1st and 10 again at the 50 on the left hash, if in fact that's where the play had started from. And again, to the point I'm trying to make, the referee's announcement on those scenarios, anything kind of unusual, announcements take on that much more importance so that everyone has an understanding. Okay, I understand, and when you hear it, okay, now it makes sense, so to speak. So it's very
Yep.
important.
And the reason I threw that scenario at you now is, and this is one that we hear from the coaches, well, the defensive penalty was a 15-yard penalty as opposed to the 10-yard penalty by the offense. That the yardage doesn't offset. Why do the penalties then offset? And that's a question that we have to explain to them. Well, you had 2 live ball penalties. Unfortunately, although one was more of a personal foul, it's still a live ball penalty, and 2 live ball penalties are going to offset. So a lot of people are thinking that, okay, we should march back 10 yards for the hold and then march the 15 yards off for the face mask, making it 1st and 5, where that's not the scenario. So that's why I kind of threw that one out at you.
Yeah, and again, the key is live ball. We actually had a play last year where we had live ball illegal motion with a defensive pass interference, and
Mm-hmm.
exactly what you said, Mike. The coach is like, "Well, how comes we don't get 10 yards out of this?"
Yep.
In other words, the DPI and as a coach, these are offsetting live ball fouls. It's
Yep.
okay, all right. I mean, that was kind of what had to be planted in his mind, a seed that had to be planted. Okay, I get it. That kind of thing. And but to your point, uh, anything unusual, sometimes folks don't quite grasp, and they don't grasp the live ball versus live ball, potentially dead ball, which we'll probably get into at some point if I'm understanding you well, Mike.
Yep. All right. So our next scenario out there, we got same 1st and 15, 1st and 10 from the 50-yard line. We got a hold on the offense on. Well, actually, let's reverse it. We're going to go with a defensive play. So we got a defensive holding by the linebacker on a tight end, live ball foul, but the ball was passed to an outside receiver, say running a slant, and now we have defensive pass interference. So you have a 15-yard defensive pass interference, plus you got a 10-yard holding penalty, both on the defense, 2 separate flags. What are we going to do in that scenario?
Okay, so before we get to the actual adjudication, one thing I would like to point out for whomever may be listening now or down the road, there's no such thing as a spot foul on the defense. That can only occur on the offense. And I think just in my own mind, years ago, I learned to separate that because it makes it much easier. I'm not a very intelligent person when I thought, oh, that's okay. So there's no such thing as a spot foul on the defense. I don't care where the guy held him. I don't care where he grabbed his face mask or anything like that. It can never be a spot foul on the defense. So now that we kind of clear that away, all right, so in Mike's play, we have a hold on the defense. We also have pass interference on the defense. Well, holding is a 10-yard penalty. Pass interference is 15. So obviously, we're going to take the 15-yard pass interference penalty. Now, in high school, it might be interesting to point out, a number of years ago, maybe Mike could state the exact year, but defensive pass interference is no longer an automatic first down, which I have found that's something that a lot of people don't realize to this very day. I mean, you can throw a 50-yard pass and it's clearly DPI, but if it was 2nd and 17, now it's just 2nd and 2, and people don't have any in college and the NFL, it's an automatic first down. Well, it is, but it's a different rules code. So at any rate, on the play that Mike brought up, we would have the holding defense declined, pass interference defense accepted. So we're going from the 50 to the 35 on the offensive left hash. And if it was 1st and 10, obviously it's going to be 1st and 10 again after the 15-yard penalty.
And again, I bring that scenario up because I've gotten yelled at by a coach. Well, we want to accept both. Coach, it's not an option. Well, I want the 25 yards. It's a holding and the reason I gave you a 15-yarder and a 10-yarder is, okay, the 15-yarder is going to benefit them, so they're going to decline the 10-yard penalty, like you said, and we're going to go with the 15-yard penalty from that point.
Right. Yep.
So, all right, I got one last scenario for you now. We've
Okay.
got, let's see, we got defensive pass interference. So 1st and 10, 50-yard line. We got defensive pass interference going down the right sideline. after the play is over, the defender who got the defensive pass interference called against them is now ranting and raving and says some, well, we'll just say some unkind words towards the particular official that threw that flag. And now a second flag comes out for an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. What are you going to have in that scenario?
Yeah. So in this scenario, we have a live ball foul and a dead ball foul. So I think that's the first thing that folks would have to separate in their mind. The live ball foul, the defensive pass interference, 15 yards, we go back to the left hash from the 50 down to the 35. And then, because we have a dead ball foul, all right, we have a dead ball unsportsmanlike conduct foul against number 8, whatever it would be. And we would go from 35 down to the 20, first down and 10, left hash for the offense at the plus 20. So, but the reason that both of those can be enforced to the previous question is because one is a live ball foul, the other is a dead ball foul. And that's something that officials probably have a pretty good grasp on. But to Mike's, I think, theme a little bit, coaches, spectators, they might not quite grasp that. Well, how comes it's 30 yards against us? The other team only got penalized 15 when they committed interference, or something along those lines might be a common question by a coach or, by a fan the weekend at a party or whatever the case would be.
Mm-hmm. So now I'm going to twist that same scenario up just a little bit. So now we got the defensive pass interference penalty, live ball foul. But now after the play, instead of it being a defensive unsportsmanlike conduct, now the receiver who got held or got interfered with starts taunting the sideline of the defending team, saying, "Oh, you can't cover me," whatever it may be, and again has choice words that's not appropriate. And now the offensive player gets hit with an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. What are we going to do in that scenario?
Okay, so it's very similar because we have a live ball foul and a dead ball foul. So the live ball foul, we would theoretically take the ball at the 50, walk it down to the 35, pass interference, defense. It's still going to be 1st and 10. Then we're going to move the ball back to the 50, unsportsmanlike conduct by the offense. All right, but because the chains haven't been set, it's still going to be 1st and 10 at the 50 on the offensive left hash. So that's what I would call a graduate level type question. And again, these are scenarios, Mike, where some folks might be out of game or think, well, that can't be, or, well, you guys stink, you don't know what you're doing. And that's obviously not accurate in the large majority of the cases.
Well, and the other thing that I wanted to bring up is, why isn't it now not 1st and 25? Because now the dead ball foul on the offense.
The chain gang hasn't been set yet.
Yep.
So until that happens, it's always going to be 1st and 10. Years ago, there was such a thing as 1st and 25. For that to happen today, it would have to be a play where, let's say, a guy makes a first down and the referee signals it and the referee starts the clock. And now all of a sudden, after everything is set, before the next snap, somebody curses at somebody or somebody a kind of a stupid knock somebody down or something like that. That's the only way we're going to end up with 1st and 25. It's very rare. It could happen, but certainly that would be very rare. And you talk about putting the offense behind the 8 ball. 1st and 25 is not good for a drive to continue.
Oh no, there's not many plays in the playbook for 1st and 25. Right. So you can anticipate a screen or a draw from my defensive coordinators out there. Something to try to make up some
absolutely.
yards.
That's a tough call sheet for the OC, though. It sure is.
Yep. All right, Jim. Again, I appreciate you taking your time out today. So I've got one last situation for you, and this one's going to deal with something that we as officials like to talk about as clean hands and dirty hands. So during a legal forward pass, the ball crosses the neutral zone, so we got a legal forward pass. The offensive receiver was illegally in motion. B now intercepts that pass, and they return the ball, but on the return, there is a clip by a defender who is now blocking for the returning, for the defensive returner, for the defensive back who may have intercepted it. what kind of scenario do we have there? So we've got a live ball foul because it was an illegal motion penalty on the offense. Okay, it wasn't a false start, which would have been a dead ball foul. We would have killed the play immediately. But illegal motion, so a live ball foul on the offense. Then we have a turnover, and then we have a live ball foul on the defense. What are we going to do in that scenario?
Yeah, so what the defense in 99.99% of the cases, coach, do you want the ball? Yes, of course we want the ball. Okay, coach, you have to decline the illegal motion penalty by them, and then you're going to get the ball, but you're going to be penalized for for your foul, either from the spot of the foul or the end of where your guy got tackled. Okay, kind of what's worse for you. But so if we start at the 50 and we have illegal motion, which we know is a previous spot foul, the guy throws a pass, it's intercepted, say at the 30-yard line, and the guy runs it back for a touchdown. But we have a hold or something on the defense on the run back. That becomes a spot foul. So we go 10 yards from wherever that flag is actually on the ground. If the guy intercepts it at the 30 and he runs back 2 yards and holds up at the 40, then we would go back from the 32 back 10 yards to the 22. So what I've always tried to speak and whatever explain to folks is if you have two penalties, one against each team, it can either be offsetting or you use the term, Mike, clean hands. In other words, the defense on your play, they did nothing wrong until after the interception. So if you didn't do anything wrong, why should you be penalized before you did anything wrong? So the theory, the rules are, well, since the defense legally intercepted the ball, if they want to keep it, they can. The caveat being they still have to get penalized for what they did wrong. Hold, block in the back, whatever the particular scenario is. So, again, you've gone over a lot of potential scenarios, and some are easier than others, but it shows that, again, it's kind of a complicated, simplistic approach to this. But if you ask yourself, again, did the defense do anything wrong before they got the ball? The answer is no. Well, it's only right that they still get the ball.
Correct.
That's the most equitable way of doing it.
And for the listeners out there, a scenario where it would have been dirty hands is if the penalty by the defense happened before the interception occurred. And these are things that, as white hats, when white hats are focused on the quarterback 90% of the time, they're not looking and seeing what those flags are downfield. They're relying on us umpires, the wings, the short wings, the deep wings, to relay the information. And we'll hear our white hat, he'll say, dirty hands or clean hands. Because right away, that's going to say if they got the ball with dirty hands, we're most likely not going to have offsetting penalties because the offense isn't going to decline their penalty to give them the ball. The offense is going to accept a penalty. The defense is going to accept a penalty because the play happened with dirty hands. But if they got the turnover with clean hands, well, then we have a different scenario. So as the crew chief and a lot of coaches just think, and we talked about it, you got two live ball fouls, but now we got a change of possession that does dictate how we're going to adjudicate those different fouls. So it is something that's important, and you hear that a lot through us: clean hands, dirty hands.
Absolutely.
Well, Jim, I think we've hit our 47-minute mark here. And we didn't even take a break today. We kind of just blew right through it. Once again, Jim, thank you very much for coming on. Jim, is there anything else that you'd like to leave the listeners with? Any information that they might want to hear or anything like that?
Well, first of all, Mike, I don't want to be remiss. I, again, very much appreciate the invite. The time flew by. I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah.
As far as folks out there, if you officiate, whether it's high school, college, the few folks in the world that do NFL, but I think it's important that you be a keeper of the game, respect the game. Many have come before us and many will come after us, but let's do what we can to promote the great game of football. In my opinion, it is America's foremost sport at the scholastic or collegiate level. And there's so many things that can be gained from playing football, officiating football, coaching football, teamwork, discipline, perseverance, subjugating yourself for the betterment of a group. I think that's all part and parcel to any officiating endeavor, quite frankly. and maybe sometimes overlooked by, I think even non-officials realize they hear all the time there's a shortage nationwide in officiating, and it's to some degree in all sports, and in some sports it's an acute shortage. But let us not be guilty of lowering the standard. Officiating is a great avocation. You meet some wonderful people. You get to go to some wonderful places, and you get to be a part of something that, in my opinion, will actually enhance your life if it's done correctly. So, again, many folks, myself included, have been very blessed, and some of the closest friends I have in this world are football officials or softball umpires that I've had the privilege of meeting, getting to know as human beings, as well as officials. So, Mike, again, I commend you and laud you for this type of a podcast. And again, I'm humbled to have been a small part of it.
Oh, again, much appreciated. And for all the other listeners out there, Rule 10 in the NFHS book, jump into it. Chapter 11 in the writing study guide goes over, breaks it down too, gives a lot more scenarios. A lot of the different scenarios I presented to Jim, that's where I got those scenarios from. So let's get our noses back in the books, because the season is fast approaching. Let's give these kids the best possible experience they can. If anybody out there has any questions, feel free to reach out to me, MikeDTheReferee@gmail.com. You can find me on all the different social media sites. Share, like, whatever you can with this podcast. Let's get the word out, and let's just all be better at what we do and keep this great sport of football the greatest team sport that there is still. So once again, Jim, truly appreciate you coming on today. Look forward to talking to you still more in the future. And again, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Back at you, Mike. Best wishes always.
Thank you.
See you soon. All righty. Bye.